I do think it's, they have like absolutely passively absorbed the idea that, a capable person can make dinner, a capable person can keep a
Yeah.
car running, a capable person can, build a bookshelf. Um, and they're fine. They're predisposed in that way. But I also think that the sort of forces of late stage capitalism and the sort of algorithm, the
Yeah.
tyranny of the algorithm
Yeah.
is no joke.
It's
And
no joke. I agree.
I think it's not a bad idea if we can sort of acknowledge how ingeniously these things are designed
Yeah.
to suck our human value out, like specifically suck out
Yeah.
our attention. One thing I'm trying to figure out in this project is how much I'm focusing on amateurs, people who just, sort of bring
Yeah.
making into their lives, and how much, I'm also really interested in
Well, we'll
people
talk
who
about it, but I don't want to talk about that now because I want to talk about what you're doing.
oh, okay.
So, hey, let me introduce you properly here, Kate. Kate is a friend and a guest of ours who's been on this podcast previously, but I want to introduce her as if this is an actual podcast because it sort of is. This is In Conversation with Frank Schaeffer, and I am Frank Schaeffer, and my guest today is Kate Cohen. Kate is a former Washington Post columnist and author of several books, including The Neppy Madonna Diaries, Reading Jewish Survival Through My Italian Family, which, by the way, we haven't done, but I want to read that sometime. And when did that book come out?
um I was like a different person. It was 1997
So,
or
so different
something.
that you don't like it anymore?
No, I do like it, but I can tell how young I was. That's all.
Okay, well, hey,
No,
we
there's
all,
great stuff in it. I think I was well, we can talk about this,
we'll
but
talk about it.
we'll talk about it.
All right. So anyway, a walk down the aisle, notes
Mm.
on a modern wedding. What was that one about?
So that was about getting married, which I had just done and was very surprised, concerned, curious to discover how many of the sort of typical wedding things
Hmm.
I I wanted to do,
Okay.
or wanted to, or at least was responding to. Sometimes I thought I was just being, different, but everybody who plans a wedding does a certain amount of that. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was really about kind of how these traditions persist,
Yeah.
and it kind of goes with my whole lifetime of thinking about how we're affected by our cultures
Yeah.
to an extent that we don't even
Well, I love the
really
titles of both of
realize.
those books. I know you may be at a different place now, but at some point we ought to go back and do those because that sounds great. And
Thanks.
We Have Little Faith, Why I Stopped Pretending to Believe, and maybe you should too. And that was one that I interviewed
Mm-hmm.
about, and it was one of my Frank Schaeffer very first, it has to be read book club selections. And that book club,
Very
by the
proud of
way, is
that.
expanded. We've got a lot of authors and titles in there now, some Pulitzer Prize winners, all sorts of stuff. So you helped us launch a book club that's become a thing. Kate's new project is, in quotes, Scratch, a column about what we make that makes us human, which you can find at scratchcolumn.substack.com. Did I say that right?
Yes. So just go to Substack.
Scratchcolumn.substack.com.
Yeah, just go to Substack and search for Scratch or for and you'll have a link or something.
Well, we're going to link to everything, and you'll
Link to
talk to Ernie
everything.
Gregg, and he'll
Yes.
link to
Or just
everything. We'll
yes.
link to your wedding. We'll link to whatever you want. Okay, so this again, as I said, is In Conversation with Frank Schaeffer, and I'm asking you to please subscribe right now on YouTube where you're watching this live or when it plays again, and to In Conversation with Frank Schaeffer on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and to my Substack, It Has to Be Said. Substack page at frankschaefer.substack.com. You can follow my new project at thegospelofzip.com, which, by the way, is a book which I read out loud and gave away for free online. It's now closing in on 7,000 views, which is a lot for an 8-hour book. You can also support our work by making a tax-deductible donation at georgebailey.org. And I just want to talk to you about your podcast. We've kind of set it up with the not your podcast, your Substack page. So first of all, just some parameters. When did you start this Substack page, and why did you start it?
I started it in December, so very
Right
recently.
now, it's brand new.
It's brand new, and it was sort of the conclusion that I came to after several months of trying to figure out what I wanted to do after I left the Washington Post. So, this is also partly a story of the current media landscape.
Yeah, sure.
And I left in March of 2025 after Jeff Bezos I was on the opinion page, and he told us that we were all supposed to write about personal liberties and free markets.
Yeah.
Something, I don't know. Anyway, not what we felt that we should write about. And so I decided that one of the great joys of working for the Post was that I had been allowed to write whatever I wanted.
Yeah.
Another of the great joys of working for the Post was the prestige and the history and the sort of, of that institution. Both of those things were being taken away, and
absolutely.
It just seemed like
the minute he didn't let his editorial board, say anything about Trump's second to life, all this business. I mean, he totally sold out, and now.
Yep.
Every time you turn around, he's making a donation to some Trump effort or something. I mean, it's just great.
Yes.
Bring us a little bit up to speed. I know this is slightly off the track, and we're going to get back to what we want to talk about.
Yeah.
But bring us up to speed on what Jeff Bezos has become as a kind of a, billionaire leader, along with Elon Musk and these other guys, Thiel and so forth, all lining up behind Trump. I'm guessing it's for the money, right? I mean, it's their corporate interests outweigh.
Sure. I think, the Washington Post is worth this much to Jeff Bezos. It's not worth that much,
right?
Compared to, what is it, Blue Origin, compared to Amazon Cloud Services, all the government contracts, all that stuff. It's worth practically nothing, except apparently as a sort of symbol of his willingness to bow down to Trump, right? Yeah. Because if he instructs his editorial board not to endorse Kamala Harris, and if he tells his opinion writers basically that they can't be from the left, like me, then that is it's sort of a symbolic obeisance to Trump. It doesn't mean anything financially to him, except in that sense.
It means something financially in that he can bow down to Trump by torpedoing the Post.
Yes.
And by doing that, then he gets more.
Right. He's currying favor for all the other.
He's currying favor for billion-dollar deals for his company, and maybe some for Trump's family, because you never know. They've made $4.5 billion since Trump's been in office for the second time in 12 months, which is a lot of money. And, it's quite amazing. So just one more step on that. And then, you can write me a column here on this right here verbally. It just seems to me that one of the big stories, I mean, there's so many big stories around Trump, but one of them is the utter sellout of so many people in business, media, and the billionaire tech class. And that has to do with them not wanting to be regulated. They don't want to be part of American democracy in that have laws and ordinary regulations applied to them. Do I have that right? Is that your opinion as well?
I mean, my opinion is that the only thing that we have to protect ourselves from the forces of rampant capitalism is government. and that's always been an imperfect shield, and it's
Sure.
always been, a sort of a better than nothing situation. They've always been, the money and government have always been interconnected, and
Yeah.
then after Citizens United, even worse. But now it just seems like one seamless,
Yeah.
it basically is. We are talking about the forces of capitalism. That's all we're talking about. And that's all. And now now we are totally vulnerable to corporations.
But I
And
think it's more than that because these corporations that we're vulnerable to are doing things we've never seen before.
yeah.
So we're not only vulnerable in the usual sense of we're building railways and shipping lines and steel mills. In the
Mm-hmm.
physical world, we understand between AI and then the online relationship with the algorithms that have been designed to hook teenagers on the phones
Yeah.
and all these kids staring at their phones, a whole generation kind of lost to normal human relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody thinks their age is different and new, but this is new. Phones used to be on, you had one on the wall and one in a bedroom. And if it rang, the mother picked it up and said, "You want to talk to my kid?" And, there was an
It's
intermediary. There were gatekeepers, and now there are
yes.
none. And
Right.
these algorithmic geniuses have changed our universe. And now they don't want any government oversight, which means they don't want any oversight because, as you quite rightly just said, that's it. I mean, there is only the government.
There is only the government. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, however much people talk about, oh, we had changes in the past with technology, everybody adjusts, but the pace of that and the scale of that just what didn't even compare.
Yeah.
Um, and and so a lot of that's what I will be talking about. I
Yeah, of
think,
course.
I've already written about AI, and I feel like it's going to be a central topic because it really gets at um, just the idea of what a human is, what a human can make,
Yeah.
and what a machine can't make,
Yeah.
and also why the people who are profiting from these machines want so very much to have us confuse the two. you
Well,
know
and they want to move our existence into an online world they run and profit from.
yeah.
And it's very far from normal human experience. Before we went live here, you and I were just talking about my grandson, Ben, who manages 5 regenerative farms in upstate New York, studied in college. This is what he does. He's out planting trees with his own hands, driving a tractor, working with the people that work, I guess you could say, for him that he's managing, but it's all very hands on. And my son, John, and this is a good introduction to what you're doing, by the way, who was a Marine, fought twice in Afghanistan and one in Iraq. Well, guess what he loves doing most of all? It isn't the job he does, managing, doing some corporate management, mostly from home, although he's on the road quite a bit.
Mm.
It's that on Thursday night and Friday night, he goes to a local bakery where he's known the baker, a terrific bakery in our area, and he works for something like $20 an hour because he's a baker. He went to baking school. This is the love of what he does, and his wife
Wow.
is too. So basically, he gets up at 3 in the morning and he goes off and he bakes professionally twice a week because that's a hands-on connection. And similarly, I'm an artist as well as a writer. I've gone back to painting recently, and Ernie Gregg, my producer, is also my agent. He's retooled my art site online, and I'm showing my work again there. And again, all of these things are the exact opposite of living through an algorithm. And this is, of course, what you're doing with, Scratch and talking about in addition to which. So I just mentioned that we're
Yeah.
very much in the same ballpark. And then Ernie was mentioning to you again before we came on that my wife does a lot of sewing, as you do. And Jeannie, in her early 50s, quit what she was doing and for 3 years went to the Boston School of Fashion Design. She had always
Yeah.
enjoyed sewing. For her 50th birthday, I built her a professional studio, an enormous 12-foot long table that you can pin into and everything you need.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's her great passion, and she makes everything, from wedding dresses to you name it. So in my family, between my painting
Right.
my grandson's management of a farm, my son baking, um, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody in our family, literally everybody in our family, has something they do with their hands that has nothing to do with the present tense, baking, farming, making, painting, sewing, but is kind of an eternal expression of human creativity. So
Yeah.
that's my
Uh,
kind of introduction to your what you're
mhm.
doing now. And then let's talk about what you're doing now.
Well, first of all, I do not sew. Maybe one day. My
Yeah.
daughter sews
Yeah.
and my sister knits, and it was from really my sister um, that I started to think about the idea of making your own clothes
Yeah.
as as a kind of way to flip the notion that your body is supposed to fit clothes.
Yeah.
Instead, fit, clothes are supposed to fit your body. And it's been
Yeah.
like that until, the 1800s or something. Every piece of clothing had to be sewn for somebody. And that's just, I'm really curious about the ways in which that perceptual shift has an effect on us and our sense of our own humanity. And
Yeah.
I'm sure that, and when I wrote a piece about it. It's called Instead of a Diet, Try Sewing.
Which I love the title, by the way.
Yeah. And because it was around the resolution time of year. And
Yeah.
I was, basically made the point, and I did some research into sort of the history of sizing and everything, that clothes aren't made to fit each of us. They couldn't be, really. I mean, you
Yeah.
almost
Of
can't even
course.
blame. And so that has a outsized effect, so to speak, on plus
Mm.
size women or women who don't fit the norm or what they're supposed to, the culture thinks they're supposed to be.
Sure.
That has a larger effect on them, has a larger effect on, gender non-conforming people who are trying to clothe themselves. But it
Mm-hmm.
has an effect on all of us.
Yeah.
So sewing is not my thing, and this whole thing is going to have to be a balance between my scratch practices, because I love to write about. I'm a cook,
Well,
and I
let's
love
talk
to.
about your scratch practices for a
Yeah,
minute, which are not
yeah,
sewing for the time being.
not
So
sewing.
you're cooking, and what do you bring personally to the scratch table, as it were? And then, of course, when you write about sewing, you're talking about what people like my wife
Yes,
does.
I'm trying to do some
But
interviews.
you do interviews with people, you do all these things. So let's back off here
Yeah,
and have you describe Scratch
yeah,
and describe what it does and what you're going to be doing and the kind of people you're talking to in the sort of interviews you do and what you hope to do. Give people a feeling for this because they
yeah.
can go to your site and start digging into the content.
Start digging in and subscribe. Nothing costs anything yet. I just want to get people into the community,
Sure.
because I feel like, the person who um, would never think of buying a pie crust, right? I
Right.
would never think of buying a crust,
Right.
has something in common with the person who would never think uh, of buying a scarf, or
Yeah.
the person who, you know what I mean? So
No,
there,
no,
I feel
totally
like
get it.
there is a
Totally
kind
get
of
it.
larger community. And first of all, scratch practices are amazing in terms of their community. I mean, when I started looking into this and realized how many knitting circles
Yeah.
are within, 5 miles of me, and how
Yeah.
many, quilting bees, and how many, it's like this whole world, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
So scratch, what I'm doing right now is a feature essay every week, and then another supplemental thing every week.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to, at least in these first few months, kind of cover the breadth of the topics that I want to discuss. So some of that
Mhm.
is extremely practical and concrete and physical, like the sewing one. I did something about baking biscuits. And some of it is more conceptual and
Yeah.
sort of relates to what we were talking about last time I was with you, which is about, if you are not, if you reject religion as the organizing premise of your life, then you have to kind of make it up yourself.
Yeah. Well, of
where
course, and
you,
it's not either or because people can be both things.
and
But
it's, yeah,
I have found I'm so interested in what you're doing because it's weird. I mean, the word scratch resonates with me because I just happen to be someone who does that. I build.
right.
I built an outdoor kitchen. I'm a mason because when I grew up, I worked with a mason in our little Swiss village, and I'm good enough to be hired by a professional and do it. It's not a hobby. I can build you anything in masonry, including cast concrete foundations, brick pizza oven out, freestanding, the whole bit. I'm a very good mason and a decent carpenter, and as a result, I have always built. Um, and it's it in building or in painting, I lose myself in a way that is,
Yes.
psychotherapy beyond price. Like I'll be out there digging a ditch to pour a concrete foundation. I mix it all up by hand. I don't buy the tools that save all the labor because it's a form of exercise as well. Um, but the thing is, what I'm trying to say is the great gift of doing things from scratch for me, and I want to
Mm-hmm.
compare notes with you, is that it's one of the few times where you lose yourself completely in the project.
Mm-hmm.
So you're living it and you
Completely
come
lose
out of
track
it
of
as if you're
time.
coming up from a deep dive. And it's
Yes.
like you take a breath and you realize, wow, I know there's a weird way to put it, but for the last 3 hours, I was
It's
free
gone.
of myself. I
Yes.
was free from me. I freed myself from me and my concerns. And doing things from scratch does that. And I
Yes.
found that in my own life.
Because it's because you're there, you're having a conversation, and you're
Yeah.
not having a conversation with whatever, the person that
No.
you're mad at in your head. You're having a conversation with the dirt and the shovel and
That's it.
it's there's a great section in Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, which sort
Yeah.
of talks about this kind of, you're sort of waiting to see what the materials give to you,
Yeah.
and then you work on those materials, and then they change, and it's this back and forth that,
Absolutely.
yes, you just totally lose track
You
of
mix up a
time.
batch of mortar, and when the consistency's right for this old brick
Yes,
wall, and
exactly.
you wet the wall down so it won't suck up all the water, you make it a little more, a little less, and you're just living it.
Yeah. And his
And
idea, is all about quality, like that you're looking for
absolutely.
this thing in your head, this idea of what the thing should be, and you're bringing in, your experience and your body knowledge and all that stuff, and that's
Yeah.
what you're aiming for. There is nothing so pleasurable, I think, as getting lost in the way that you're talking about, and that can be um a very physical practice, uh or it can be, Jeff Tweedy talks about the same thing, in terms of making a song and
Yeah.
writing lyrics, which is, I did
Absolutely.
a couple of weeks ago. I decided I was going to write a love song. And so that was another, I had uh, a sort of theorist of songwriting on. I interviewed him some, and then I tried to write a song. And,
Yeah.
sort of the Scratch is going to explore, say, the arts that we are afraid of, the arts that feel easy to us, that there's no friction between, oh,
Yeah.
I'm going to
Ernie
sit
sent me
down.
a note saying your article is called "Shitty Love Song" in quotes.
Yes, should be those ones.
Hey, but
because
I
because
found
all
this.
of us, because
Yeah.
my friend, Ben Arthur, who is the host of the Songwriter podcast, but
Yeah.
also Jeff Tweedy, whose book I read, and also me and you and everybody, every artist knows that you have to write something shitty or make
Yeah. Of
something
course.
shitty first.
Yeah.
But it's hard to remember. So that was about that.
One
So,
thing that I've found that I've written about a lot too is that I find other things where you lose yourself
mhm,
and that actually add to certain relationships. For instance, I'll give you an example. I miss my 11-year-old granddaughter Nora right now because she goes to school further away than it used to. So her mother brings her home because she works at the same school. And I used to
mhm,
pick her up every day. So the other day I just said, I'm missing you horribly, kind of another empty nest thing. She came down and we cooked together because I've done a lot of cooking with my grandchildren. So we just made a meal and she was sitting there peeling carrots and potatoes and cutting everything up. And She's old enough now to pour the boiling water out of the pot
Hmm.
without scalding herself and so on. And the thing was, I was as lost in that activity again,
Yeah.
and a passing on of knowledge of how to do something from scratch. And
Yes.
one thing I always did teaching cooking to my grandchildren is I didn't do any of the prep work. Literally, I don't even open the bag of potatoes. And then, in other words, they do the entire process, get the water from the sink, put it on the stove. I don't
Right.
touch what they're doing
Oh, that's
at
so interesting.
all.
So you're not making, here's your little station and you can, no. Okay.
Never. And
That's
by the
very
way, I
cool.
taught them all to ski the same way. In other
Yeah.
words, I didn't say, follow me, do exactly the same thing. I just said, okay, I'm going to show you what I'm doing here. And then, they got into it, but it meant I wasn't following them, instructing them. I was letting them figure it out and then just making tweaks. So, teach someone how to cut. I mean, this is one of my pen knives. You know this trick. You hold it like a claw. You don't have your finger out on the
Right.
potato.
Yeah.
You hold it like this.
Yes.
Okay, so I've taught some methods, but I do that general
Because,
teaching before they do something. But then they take it out of the bag, they do the
yeah.
whole thing. And I find in watching a child at all ages, whether it's construction in the barn, I redid the barn with my grandson through COVID when he was 11 and teaching her to cook. And my granddaughter Lucy was down here today because they had a snow day and she's 17. And we were talking about Nora cooking the other day. And she was saying, well, just like you taught me, I find the passing on of scratch in your hands, dexterity in your hands that goes from your brain to your hand without thinking it through. Um, not only something of tremendous pleasure, but again, you've got all these very capable kids around you who do stuff.
Yeah. Can I ask you, were you this hands-on with your kids? Or is this one of those,
Yes,
my
I
grandkids
was.
gave me a second? Oh, you were.
My
Okay. So,
grandkids gave me a second chance. Where they gave me a real big second chance is I am not as impatient with them as I was with my
right.
own children.
Right.
And I am not sort of in my survivor mode coming out of an evangelical past where fathers were
Right.
supposed to discipline children and all the rest of it. So, I mean, this is a weird way to put it, but I'm a better human.
Yeah.
And so
No.
I'm a better grandfather than I was a father.
Right.
But the hands on thing always existed because I've always built and I've always cooked. And so all three of my kids are really good cooks. And Jeannie's always cooked and Jeannie's always sewn and made and cut and done things so that and now she does a lot of stitching, beautiful stuff she makes, um, as well as the sewing kind of stuff. So what's normal in our house is for kids to walk in at any age and find their parent and now their grandparent doing something with their hands.
Yeah.
That's normal for us. So carpentry in the barn, masonry outdoors, Jeannie sewing room, stitching, cooking. I can't imagine if you took all that out of my life, I literally wouldn't know what to do with myself because there would be no place where I could disappear and just throw myself into something.
Well, it's really interesting because so I live on a farm and I'm like very serious home cook, and extremely capable. My husband built most of this house. He built the desk I'm at. He built our
Mm.
beds, our dressers, our blah, blah. And he's a farmer. So he's
Yeah,
always out there fixing what a farmer is someone who fixes a tractor,
yeah,
in my experience.
yeah.
So many skills. And I know he's at least been a little kind of disappointed that our kids haven't wanted or asked to learn to do a lot of the stuff that he
Yeah.
does. And I think he feels mixed about it because I think he
How
felt like
old are they now? Your children?
they are 25, 23, and 20.
Yeah, and I know this will sound facile and stupid and puerile and masculine and dumb, but you don't look old enough. You look the age you're saying they are. So whatever this farming life is doing,
Yeah,
it's
I
doing
stay
something
inside.
wonderful
Are
for
you kidding
you.
me? I just think it's interesting. I mean, they are all interested in cooking, but
Yeah,
like to the extent that and we do cook together some, but to the extent that they have said, "Hey, mom, I want to learn how to make X, Y, or Z." It's not as much as you would think. And I think, you know what I think it is partly because a lot of our skills are just very skills, like
yeah,
things you need. Um, until you need it,
until you need
maybe.
it. Yeah.
Until you need it, you're not necessarily going to value it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a really interesting topic that I plan to explore is, right now there's so many things that I do that I really don't have to do. You don't have to do it anymore in this mass produced
Sure, of course
consumer
not.
economy.
Yeah.
And so I think there's probably a period where a lot of people lost a lot of these skills because
But
they
I
didn't.
think a good question for people who are therapists. I mean, if I was a therapist, which I'm not, one of the things I would ask anybody suffering from depression or any kind of anxiety levels and all the rest is, what do you do with your hands that allows you
Yeah,
to escape yourself and just indulge? It doesn't have to be what I do, but I
right.
find that so therapeutic. I can't be the only person that
But it,
just needs to get out and do a project.
yes, you're not. You're definitely not. I mean, that is one of the things when I first started to conceptualize this idea, and I feeling lost in my career and and in the political situation, which you
Yeah.
don't even want to look at. Um, I took a lot of comfort in baking and cooking, as I
Yeah.
always do. And I began to notice how many of my friends had the thing that they do. I have a friend who's building a cabin with only wood from right around there. And I
Yeah.
have, you
Yeah.
know, a friend who never buys a stitch of clothing. And
But I
I
like the
do
word,
think
I
you
think you
get,
use this word, but it's very key to me, and that's the word capable.
yeah.
Because I
Well,
really
that's
pity
true.
people who can't do anything. I really pity them. And when you see a lot of the stuff
Yes.
online, I'm not saying everybody has to be good at everything, but
Yeah.
there's got to be something you do well with your hands that bypasses screens and intellectual pursuit or anything else. And you're just, you're good at this. And if you took
Yes,
that,
I absolutely think that
yeah,
sense is so important to how you feel about yourself.
yeah,
But I think these days you has to be something that you intentionally seek out, or you're lucky enough to have a father or grandfather that really makes it very much a
yeah,
part of their lives.
yeah,
But now a lot of these things are sort of reduced to pastimes and hobbies,
yeah,
which is
which is
fine. I guess it doesn't matter, but it's still the sense that you have to choose it now because modern life is is gonna put you in the way of an algorithm or a virtual desk job or something like that.
But the
If you
thing
just
is,
follow that.
I found something, and that is, and I'll ask you what you think of this.
Yeah.
It's not that your kids have to do what you do, but if they grow up with people who are capable in some area, this is a weird way to put it, but they know what capable looks like.
I meant to say that. You're
And they
totally
can do
right.
something else, but
They know
yeah,
they know that it's totally easy to make bread or whatever it is. They've seen
yeah,
it, they know.
they
And I
know.
do think that they believe that
And basically,
on some
then
level.
the idea of having something you're capable at that takes you
Yeah.
out of the modern universe of everything's made for you, the middle aisle of the supermarket, the
Yes.
screen, the algorithm, the thing,
Mm-hmm.
being online all the time. And there are other areas too. My grandson one time asked me, about, I don't know, he's 15 now, this particular grandson, not the farmer, and he was saying, "Why do you always talk to everybody?" And I said, "Well, because I really enjoy connecting with people and I'm interested in them, and I don't pass people by, whether it's somebody at the checkout counter or whatever." But the thing is, I never had to tell him. Um, that connection with other people is good and it's a form of sanity. He's seen it.
He
And
saw it.
so
Yeah.
he can compare that at some point to just staring at a screen on a phone and texting people. You know, maybe you call them, maybe you talk. And I think a lot of these examples transpose into other areas of just how one lives as opposed to the specific.
I do think I do think it's, they have like absolutely passively absorbed the idea that, a capable person can make dinner, a capable person can keep a
Yeah.
car running, a capable person can, build a bookshelf. Um, and they're fine. They're predisposed in that way. But I also think that the sort of forces of late stage capitalism and the sort of algorithm, the
Yeah,
tyranny of the algorithm
yeah,
is no joke.
it's
And
no joke. I agree.
I think it's not a bad idea if we can sort of acknowledge how ingeniously these things are designed
Yeah,
to suck our human value out, like specifically suck out
yeah.
our attention
But isn't it amazing
and
that
our
these same
time.
people who have designed these things as an industry have sold out to Donald Trump, who himself is, above all else, a con artist? I mean,
Is it
this is the age
amazing?
of,
It's
yeah,
depressing.
billionaire con artists. And when I
Yes.
look at Elon Musk and Peter
Yeah.
Thiel and these other guys, yeah, they've done some things. I mean, although, not very well a lot of the time. But they've been fortunate, and there's been an intersection of a new
Yeah.
technology, which itself is very addictive. But they are also con artists because they are selling us products that are not actually necessary to a good life, but made us believe they are.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
that's a con.
They made us believe that they're inevitable, that they are,
Well, that
you
they're the
know,
future, that AI
that
will
they're the
redefine
future.
everything. It will
Yes.
not. And when you
Yeah.
look at some of the philosophers, some of these tech people, these tech nerds follow, they are con artists as well. And they've started whole little groups out on the West Coast that are like little religions. And they have their philosophers, they have people they follow, but they all have one thing in common, and that is all these leaders are telling them they are the most important thing happening right now,
Yes.
and everybody else is second rate. Well, anybody who's read a little history has been there and done that. I mean, we know how this works. So I would just say you have to take all this high powered stuff with a bit of a pinch of salt because in the end, I have more faith in basic human nature being vindicated finally when these people just seem irrelevant and the bubble bursts. But the question is with your own children and grandchildren, what will be left for their generation? Because eventually the humans will move on from this algorithmic universe and these promises of AI solving everything. But in the meantime, terrible damage has been done to people.
Well, we're going to lose a lot of skills, I think.
Very
And
much so.
it's sort of, to me, it's a little bit analogous. I think a lot of people lost skills after the Industrial Revolution because
Yeah.
we became sort of just the measure of how many, wage earning hours we could put in at a
Yeah.
factory as opposed to like a person who could create a pair of boots.
Yeah.
Um, so over time, I feel like in the 1950s everybody started to lose the skill of being able to bake biscuits from scratch because essentially we were being told it was going to make our life better and faster and everything if we used Bisquick.
Yeah. Labor
And
saving
so
devices, commercials, and
people lost skills.
yeah.
And I feel like the same thing, and now regaining them, but somewhat intentionally, or because they come from some other culture, or using YouTube. I mean, the
Well, or
one
even
thing,
these days it's gone further because when you say losing skills, in one generation it was how to bake a biscuit or make a pie crust, but
yeah,
it's progressed now to the point of how to have a conversation,
that's what I was going to say.
how to
So
make eye
now
contact, how
we're
to date,
starting,
how to
yes.
fall in love,
So it's
how to
gone
have
from this,
sex, how to have babies. I mean,
yes,
you've got
we've
now
gone
it's
from
just
this physical
basics.
realm of
Yeah,
skills that we are fewer and fewer of us know how to do
yeah,
to now thinking, writing,
right.
expressing our own thoughts, um, and
When it comes to
uh, you
thinking
know,
and writing, you also have a genuine threat from AI saying, well, you don't need to think anymore. You don't even
yeah,
need a relationship. We'll provide that through, again, this same medium.
absolutely.
But
Human contact.
that's con artists at work. That's not real.
Well, it's not real, but it has a real effect on on human beings. We are susceptible to it. It
Very
is,
much so. But when all this goes away, the fact of the matter is, my wife can sew you your clothes. I can build you
yeah,
a house.
yeah,
You can cook. Your husband can make something. In the final, I guess, reality of human existence, we're still in a physical world.
Yes.
And at a certain point, if you can't make eye contact, have a conversation, mate, have a
Yes.
date, get married, stick with someone, know how to apologize, and you can't bake biscuits on top of it, you're really fucked up. Because
I
what
totally
can you
agree.
do?
Yeah.
What can you do? So the whole thing works as long as the whole thing works. And the minute you pull one thread out and it comes apart in your hands, now what?
What can you do? That's what they want, is for you to be totally dependent
Absolutely. And
and
the yeah,
only exist. We don't even exist as wage hours practically now. We just exist as consumers,
yeah,
and as the sort of resource that gets mined
sure.
for advertisers. So my column, so Scratch is really about fighting back
Yeah,
in some way, and
yeah,
it's not like, and I would say uh, fighting back against mass produced, late stage consumer capitalism. And it's also about fighting back against AI, and
yeah.
the
But it's
idea
also
that,
hands how to do stuff
and it's also how to do stuff. Right.
because that
It's
is
totally
fighting
how to
back,
do
how
stuff.
to do stuff.
I mean, anything that I write that is about how to do stuff that I don't know how to do will
Yeah,
have resources, here's where you should go look or whatever.
yeah,
It's more about why to do stuff.
yeah,
Why? What is this for? What do we get out of it? And how is it different to knit a hat for protesters in Minneapolis than just
yeah,
to send Amazon over with hats? They're cheaper if you just send them with Amazon. So what is it about making something and that sort of human input um, into a material object
yeah. I just wanted to tell
that
you,
makes it special
yeah,
and
Ernie, send
important?
me a note, something I've got to tell you here.
Okay.
That is, we're gonna, we feel this project so important that we're gonna make Scratch our special. It has to be read selection for March.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we're gonna do our bit to get this thing going. But so just note that on the way by. We really believe in this. But it seems to me, and I want to change the subject here a little bit, and this not from scratch, but just look at it a different way.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about this, and I haven't quizzed you on it, so I'm not searching
Oh,
for
you
any.
can watch me decide in real time.
Yeah, it seems to me though that if I was looking for a watchword or a phrase that I live my life by as a 73-year-old man of three grown children, five grandchildren, one of whom is married, who have all, and I've done this intense childcare for 17 years for the three youngest ones. The phrase that ties everything together, what you're saying, what I believe in, how I try to live my life, what I've
Mm-hmm.
learned in 73 years. If there's one thing I believe in, I'll put it this way, it is the intrinsic worth of beauty. And intrinsic means no justification, not because it makes you money, not
Mm-hmm.
because it makes you happy, not because it gives you status,
Mm-hmm.
because it adds in itself, without explanation, it is of ultimate worth. And I think that, the intrinsic worth of beauty, to sort of put it in just basic terms, is why I build stone walls. It isn't because the finished product is beautiful, which I think it is, because they look like the raised gardens in Liguria in Italy. But the actual action is a beautiful thing because it is beautiful to me. It makes me a more beautiful person. I'm a better husband and father when I walk in from the house having done that. So the intrinsic worth of beauty is where I think all of this hinges. So, why I paint is because I believe in the intrinsic worth of beauty. I'm unashamed to try to make something beautiful. What I paint reflects my life. I paint a lot of the things that I cook with, apples, oranges, lemons,
Mm.
and these other things. So there's a connection. I'll show you one here. What have I got here that I've got handy? Um, here's some apples. I'm going out of frame here a second, but I'll just show you what I'm talking about. This is what I do. Here's a little painting, and these are the way I paint apples.
Oh, Love it.
Okay. And you can see the texture. Can you see it big?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't paint in a way, it's not tempera. I don't pretend it's not paint. This is oil paint. This is what
Right.
oil paint looks like. It has texture. Okay. But
Hmm.
these apples literally, are what I grabbed from my kitchen. So this isn't just, these aren't any apples. If you see the apple I painted, there's the apple. There's the painting of the apples. This isn't, this is, these are beautiful because my wife cooks with these and I paint them.
Right.
And I've always painted. And to me, I don't need to justify that. Like, I don't have to tell you, I don't have to call it great art. I don't have to say it's an aesthetic. I don't need to justify it
Right.
at
You
all.
don't need to sell it.
No, it has intrinsic worth.
Yes.
And to me, I look at everything in my life that matters to me, and it's the stuff that has the most intrinsic worth.
Right.
Loving my wife, enjoying our sexual relationship, enjoying childcare, teaching my grandson how to do carpentry. None of these things need to be justified, and they're not a stepping stone to something else. In
Hmm.
themselves, they have intrinsic worth. And I know I'm going on at length about this, but I really think that's why scratch is important, because you're telling people you're worthwhile. And the other
You
way to
are
put this is
worthwhile.
there's no small moments. When you're baking a
Right.
biscuit or talking to the lady at the checkout counter or painting a painting or cooking a meal,
Hmm.
that's as big a thing as anything you will do in this life. That's as important as any business meeting, making a mortgage payment. And that is my philosophy of life, which is why I love this scratch project, because it's exactly where I live. And now you're doing it.
This morning, my essay was about making a holiday from scratch. Um, and so I think, I totally agree with you that these things have intrinsic worth, but I also think that such is the human being
Sure.
that we have to remind ourselves what has intrinsic worth, and
Yeah.
we have to make some effort to well, what I talked about this morning was about our sort of family holiday, which revolves around pizza, and sounds kind of silly, but it is a symbol of our sort of collective just insistence
Mm-hmm.
that some things are meaningful. Food is meaningful. Scratch cooking's meaningful. Friends are meaningful, and that sort of absence an external authority, which you and I have in common, right? I'm
Right.
not. Without sort of this sort of divine plan, or this,
Sure.
somehow humans are special within the divine or whatever.
Yeah.
If you don't have that, it's really our job to decide what makes meaning in our lives,
Yeah.
and to celebrate what makes meaning in our
Yeah.
lives.
Yeah.
So that's part of it too, is not just doing of the things which, as you say, just makes your life better. It makes you feel better. It makes you feel
Sure.
confident. It makes you feel engaged. I am sort of obsessed with all the mental work involved in physical labor. And I
Yeah.
think people don't, I think, ever since sort of a laboring man was just begun to be considered as, what his body could do and not what his brain was doing,
Yeah.
as a consequence of the Industrial Revolution. I really think it's important to point out at every possibility, like how much thinking I'm doing when I'm cooking, how much thinking
Absolutely.
you're doing when you're painting, and
Well,
it's
the guy who runs
so
a
mental.
boatyard next to my house, who can
Yeah.
literally build or do anything, he can actually build you a boat.
Yeah.
And I don't think he went to university, but he's
Yeah.
literally this most capable,
Right.
smartest person I know.
Exactly.
So basically, when I look at Elon Musk or I look at Scott next door, I'd
Yeah.
much rather be Scott's neighbor, because Elon Musk can't do shit.
We
If you was
assume.
No, if you stuck with him on a desert island, you're dead, because you better do all your own hunting and cooking,
Yeah.
because the guy won't catch anything.
Yeah.
Um, you
There's a
know,
lot. So there's that aspect of it. There's the doing of the thing and there and what that all that brings you. And
yeah.
then I think we also have to recognize how much our humanity resides in that doing and in that relationship with the material world and with one another. And I think, it's one small way to kind of preserve our sense of agency in
Well,
this
and it
in
brings
this
up, that's a
world.
perfect segue, which I did not rehearse with you, but it's going to sound like it because the next thing I wanted to tell you that I take from what you're doing and certainly
Mm-hmm.
reflects what I do. I think you can actually judge the intrinsic worth of what you're doing on a number of levels, what it does for you. But
Yeah.
I have an absolute measure that is 100%, and that is what does it do for me that then reflects the quality of my relationships with the people I love.
Yes. Yeah.
I am a better father, husband, and grandfather because
Yes.
I lose myself in painting. I am a better husband, father, and grandfather because I lose myself in cooking. I am a better father, husband, and grandfather because I lose myself in building. And I know this because they are wonderful destroyers of ego because I'm not thinking about myself. I'm thinking about how much water did I put in this mortar? I'm thinking about, hey, I'm gonna use a little more painting medium in this red. Oh, it's a little too thin. I better add some paint. It takes you out of yourself. This is what nothing seems to do this for Donald Trump. And I'm not
Mm-hmm.
being a smartass here. It's always about him. Whereas I
It's about
resurface for these
right.
jobs, and it's so refreshing. And
Right.
when
It's about the
when I finished
material.
my last book, The Gospel
Yeah.
of Zip, you see the picture up here, which
I
is all
see.
about
I got to
that.
get myself a picture.
Yeah, when I finished The Gospel of Zip, Jeannie, who dares to tread where angels fear to tread, or whatever the thing is, said to me, "Well, you better start to paint again unless you're going to start a new book." And it
Right.
was like, well, wait a minute. I haven't been painting for 7 years. I had an art site and sold a bunch of stuff, and I used to have shows and all the rest of it. What are you talking about? Well, I started again. And it's like, of course, she was completely right. And I needed to do something to get up for in the morning, like that I'm going to lose myself in. And of course, the benefit's massive in all the ways we've been talking about, but it also means that um, every single day feels like it had a purpose, whether it's cooking my grandchildren lunch or painting a picture. Whereas if it was just work in the professional sense of, say, reading a book to prepare to do a podcast on it or doing commentary or whatever my work is, um, I wouldn't be I'd be less of a good person to be married to or to be spend an afternoon with as a grandchild because work, I'm not saying work can't feed you, but work is not what we're talking about. It
Mm.
isn't that you don't work hard at these things that you talk about in Scratch. They're work, but not in the sense that I'm using the word.
Yeah. I agree with you. And there is something about it too. And I guess I think I should write about this. One of the terrifying things about being a human being is knowing that you're going to die,
Hmm.
and which I think is the source of a lot of the you know religions that are out there. It's really
Hmm.
just something to battle this fear. But it doesn't bother me
Hmm.
at certain moments, and those moments are
Yeah.
when I am completely immersed in something, and it could be morning, it could be night, I don't know, I could be 20, I could be 70, I don't
Hmm.
know, I'm just a brain in in relationship to, could be words, but in relationship to this soup that isn't quite right. I got to get it
Hmm.
right. It's not quite right, or I'm a brain in relationship um to the lyrics that I'm writing or something. It's taking you away from yourself. Um and it's taking you away from your own mortality too. And in the sense that anything is left of us after we're gone, I feel like that mood that you bring back to the example that you set, of course, and the skills that you pass on, and then also that mood, that sense of peace that you bring
Mm.
back to your relationships, that reverberates.
Yeah.
That reverberates after you're gone, through them to other people after they're gone, and that,
Mm.
to me, that's what it's all about too.
Yeah, and just the act of being a capable person, because that passes on a template
That passes on too. That passes on too.
for
Yeah.
how you do things. Talk a little more about Scratch, how people can do this, we're going to link to it and make you our
We'll
March
link
leading
to it.
columnist.
You can go to Substack and search for Kate Cohen or search for Scratch. The URL code, it's scratchcolumn.substack.com.
Yeah.
You could also go to my website, katecohen.net, and that'll have, that'll take you there in a
Yeah.
roundabout way. I would love for people to subscribe. I feel like, as I said, I feel like we do have a common
Mm.
um, philosophy. All the people that I know who make all the different kinds of things,
Yeah.
and it has to do with finding value
Well, I
in.
love that you're a cook and your husband's a farmer and you're a writer, so you're able to articulate what you're
Mm,
doing in ways that a lot of people who
yeah,
do farming and cooking aren't necessarily also writers. So it's a great gift because, the important gift is the cooking and the farming, but your writing is able to translate into a world where people need access to
sure.
what
Yes, and
you
that
do
and that and that
specifically.
world is also threatened, of course. The whole threat of, I mean, I don't think it's truly threatened, but in some ways, the idea that artificial intelligence, large language model, can somehow do what you and I do when we write. It's
Yeah,
hilarious, but it's
yeah,
also going to mess with things.
yeah. And but,
Um,
but again, the truth will out, and these guys, these inflated egos who are in the world creating these algorithmic realities for the rest of us, you know, like my neighbor Scott, who can build you a boat, says, yeah, but they can't do shit. And what he means by that is like some new neighbors move in and they're more upscale kind of people and so forth. And I'm saying to him, they're looking to do, and he just sort of divides it into, can they do stuff or not do stuff? And if they can't do shit, then who do you call? Because you're not even going to be able to decide whether the contractor is good or not, because you don't know how to do anything. So how are you going to know? If you're capable in one area, you sort of recognize other capable people. They give
you
off a
recognize
different
other
vibe.
capable people. You recognize the idea that something can be fixed and not just thrown
Yeah.
away. You definitely, that's
I'm a
definitely,
mason and not a plumber, but if some guy shows up who
yeah,
says he's a plumber, I'll know in 10 minutes if he's what he says he is, because I know what it
right.
looks like when a guy's hands can work with his brain and make something work.
Yes, yeah,
And I know
exactly.
what dicking around looks like. And so it's the same thing with cooking and sewing. It's very worthwhile to be physically capable in some area just to get through life so you can see what other people are doing and understand it.
I have experienced, definitely, the more physically capable a person is, the less they say make a big deal about it.
Exactly.
I'm sure my husband has stood by while other people are trying to fix
Yeah.
something, and he, you know,
Yeah.
um, yeah, that's, I'm really curious. There's so many skills I don't have. Do you feel like that at all? Or that there are things that you don't?
Absolutely. Tons
Yeah,
of things. And that's why I go
yeah,
next door and ask Scott how to do stuff.
yeah, exactly.
I say, Scott, I'm
Um,
cutting a piece of corrugated roofing I put on this outdoor garden. I don't know how to cut it. What would you do? And that's one thing capable people do. They learn from
yeah,
other
they
capable
share
people.
information.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then he says, here, and not only that, I'll lend you
yeah.
the tool. Here's how you do it. I'll lend it to you.
I'm also really interested in, say, how gender defines sort of the different skills that people pick up.
Yeah.
I will never forget this time in college where a close friend of mine, a man who could, I swear, make a like watertight raft out of branches and duct tape or
Mhm.
whatever, right?
Yeah,
Incredibly capable, much more capable human being than I was. But at some point, he had like he lost a button on his shirt, and he asked me if I could sew it on.
that would be me.
I don't know how to sew, but I
But he figured
assumed
you'd
that
know you'd be closer to it because you're a woman. Somehow
because
that,
I'm a woman, you
yeah.
know, because I'm a woman, and because I'm a woman, I was like, well, I guess so. And then I do. It's not hard to sew on a button.
Yeah,
You
you'll
just
figure it
figure
out.
out the things that you think you're supposed to do. So I
Yeah,
think that kind of thing is really interesting.
yeah.
There's a lot, there's negative stuff. There's a lot of gatekeeping and judging within some craft communities. That's fun to look at.
Yeah.
And then as I said, I also want to look at more abstract concepts, like say gender, and which is probably the very first off the shelf concept that we were, that was placed on top of us.
Yeah.
So people who do marriage differently, people who decide instead of having a regular career and blah, 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 they're just going to travel. I mean, I find that sort of thing interesting when culture says you do it one way, capitalism
Yeah.
says you do it one way, and all this stuff, and you decide, no, that's not how my life is going to be. So I'm doing some, just making your life from scratch, which
Yeah.
is related but different,
A
and we'll
book that
see
you
how
would
much my
enjoy.
readers want to like follow me around.
A book that you would enjoy that would inform a lot of what you're doing on a very basic level that really, if I had to name three books that are the most important I've ever read, this is one of them. And it's by Elizabeth Marshall Thomas.
I'm writing this down.
It's her and her mother's notes made in the 1950s when they lived for a year in the Kalahari Desert with the Sand People before any other outside contact had been there. And she was 19 and her mother wrote books on it and she's written, but The Old Way is the name of the book.
The
And
old
The Old
wait.
Way by Elizabeth Marshall Thomas.
Okay,
Okay,
I'm
the
all over
Sand
it.
People were hunter-gatherers. So their life and survival depended on being capable.
Yeah.
Okay, now this will blow your mind. They had been doing the same thing in the Kalahari before Elizabeth Marshall Thomas and her dad, who, by the way, was the founder of Raytheon, took a couple of
Mm.
years off to travel and lived with them and made notes. The Sand People had been there, the Kung or the Sand People had been there in the Kalahari. I guess people call them Bushmen for 100,000 years. 100,000 years. How long have we been here in modern
Mhm.
America? Not 100,000 years.
Mhm.
And childcare was shared between men and women, not because of some feminist realization, but because you couldn't survive unless everybody
Right.
helped. Women had a tremendous place in the culture. They were not subservient to men because you couldn't survive if the women didn't gather while the men hunted. The meat was always distributed by the old women because you couldn't survive if the men got greedy and kept it for themselves. So everything that we've learned because of Jesus's teaching or feminism or modern psychology, they'd been doing for 100,000 years,
Mhm.
and it was the key to their survival. So she describes in loving detail the most capable people I've ever read about, the best parents and grandparents I've ever heard of anywhere. She's not idealistic. She's living there in the 1950s. This is not about feminism or anything modern at all. It's just their observations. And it really changed the way I see things. And one thing it made me convinced of is there is something you can call basic human nature. And basic human nature is about relationships and survival by necessity
Mhm.
because it works. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been there 100,000 years. In other words, all the things we take as moral teachings, either religious, philosophical, political, whatever, they came to as methods of actual survival. Love your children, take care of them, don't hit them, stick with the people you care for, give a place to old people. So, I was more informed and changed by that book in the sense of it confirmed things that I've stumbled across by chance.
Right. It put a structure around it in a
It
way.
did. It was
Yeah.
like, oh, this thing I've discovered, like you love your grandchildren and take care of them. And people say, well, that's women's work bullshit. The Sand People did it for 100,000 years, 100,000 years.
Yeah.
And that's why they stuck around because they were fixing lunch for their grandchildren. and teaching them shit. And there wasn't this division between men and women and all the rest of it. So I love that
Hmm.
book as
Oh,
much
I
as
can't
any book I've
wait.
ever read. Yeah. And she's a wonderful writer, by the way. She's just terrific. She's written about dogs and people and all sorts of things. Elizabeth Marshall Thomas, I don't know if she's passed away or not, but she'd be in her 90s if she hasn't. And she's just luminous.
I hope to be able to write about some books. I don't know how people will take that, but I love it. And when I first started conceptualizing um, this project, I wanted to reread the things I loved from my childhood, which were
Yeah.
like the Boxcar Children. Do you remember the
Yes.
Boxcar
Yes,
Children?
absolutely. I do.
And all the Little House on the Prairie
Me too.
books.
The whole
Like
bit.
it's so. I was enchanted with that little doll, that
Yeah, absolutely.
that Laura got, and I was in all the descriptions of doing and making things.
Well, if you
For
like
me,
descriptions of doing and making things, I'm serious. Scratch the old way by Elizabeth Marshall Thomas. She's written the book for you because it is
okay,
like everything you're talking about
yeah,
is what the Sand People did every day to survive.
yeah. The
And
survival
you'll love
again,
that.
the survival thing is so interesting to me.
Her big point though is that they were happy.
Yes,
They don't have any
they
of
were
the shit.
happy, and
They were happy.
they were doing. It's kind of like
They were smart and
on a
happy.
societal level, the way that
Yes.
we were talking about how
Yes.
on just a individual physical level, you are trying to make that picture of your apple right, and you're
Yeah.
working with the materials and the light and everything, and that's the goal. And so they're doing that on a societal level. They got to make it
They
work,
did.
and
They did.
they need both
They
men and
did.
women to, they're making it work, and they're not making it work according to some religious tradition that
Yeah.
handed down certain rules. They're figuring it out in terms of
Yeah.
what works in their lives.
Yeah,
So
and I love that,
yeah,
and that's why when I hear you talking, your voice reminds me very much of what Elizabeth Marshall Thomas discovered there. You're trying to sort of recreate here, but of course we're in trouble, so you're having to also push
we're in
back against
trouble.
certain things.
Yeah,
Whereas they had just stumbled into something that's
yeah,
natural, and real.
yeah.
But you'd love the book. Hey, when I sign off here in a second, stick around and talk to Ernie so we can
Okay, great.
do two things. One, get names of people we ought to be talking to that you know that we haven't met yet, authors or friends, or maybe we should interview your husband about your farm or whatever. But in addition to which, how we can connect more with Scratch and do everything we can to help get this going.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, hey, always good. Let's do it again.
let's do it again. Absolutely.
Yes. And much love to you, and great for doing what you're doing. This
Thank
is
you. And I'll be bugging you apparently I'm going to be bugging each one of your children and grandchildren because they all have different things to talk
well, in
about.
addition to which, Ben lives up your way and
Yeah.
nearby, and he's a farmer.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you don't have commonality there, and they're very hands-on, and both Ben and Claire, his French wife, who met in college, love cooking.
Yeah.
They do all the things you love doing, plus are the kind of people you're writing about.
Mm-hmm.
So, hoping that works
Sounds
out.
great.
Talk to Ernie, and listen, as
Okay.
Kate, definitely favorite person status, friend of the show.
Yes, I made it. All right. Thank you, Frank.
Talk to you again.
Keep on
Anytime you
painting.
need anything, talk to Ernie and we'll book you again to
All
launch
right.
it, do it, whatever.
Fantastic.
Yep. Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.